Let's see. We are recording. Cool. Cool. All right. Welcome to Music Management Mondays. We have our special guest in today, Justin LaMotte. I'm Leroy, co-founder of B.A.K, and we're here to talk about music management, hear about Justin's journey, tips of the trade, just casual dialogue on, state of the industry and just tidbits as it relates to us managers and how we operate and how we can help artists, man. Nice to see you, Justin.
Nice to see you, Leroy, man. It's a pleasure doing this platform too, especially like our journey, man. It's cool to we came up together and I'm a fellow Violator alum, man, and it's rare to like still see that connectivity still 10 years plus later.
Yeah, there's like I love to see like the tree, like the Violator tree, the folks who kind of graduated from that era to to stay, not even use the word relevant, but just doing some amazing things in music, right? And you're one of them, man. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be part of this. I know you're a busy guy. Just to get right into it, man. Tell us about your journey from when you started as a manager. Did you know you wanted to be a manager? Give us like the early days, Justin.
All right. So my journey really started my musical journey started in middle school. I had to do a musical class and I learned how to play trombone. And then I think my 8th grade year, Drumline came out, and I was just fascinated by Nick Cannon and him playing the drums. So I was like, man, I want to learn how to play the drums and play in a high school marching band. So I graduated. I studied drumline over that summer. Went to high school that first day and did the audition and made the drum line from that. And then from there, I just kind of learned more and more how to play drums. So that whole high school experience was just me learning about instrumentation, rhythm, because I didn't have no rhythm as a kid. And also just understanding music. So my background in general growing up, I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I was born in the 90s, early 90s, in 90. And so, during that time of my era growing up, when I could comprehend music, I was paying attention to what was being played around really in the high school kids listening to around Baton Rouge. And like, that was Boosie and Webby. So like, to me, what most people's Jay-Z or like Nas or Fab is, Boosie and Webby is that to me. Like, Boosie is my Jay-Z. So like, that's all I really knew. I knew about all the down south artists too, like T.I. and like Wayne. But to me, Boosie was like everything because he ran Louisiana, or he ran Baton Rouge at that time. Like that's all I knew from the city I was from. But fast forward to high school, I started getting into instrumentation, not necessarily thinking I was going to do anything with that. I just, at the time, that was my passion. But as we're approaching graduation, I got accepted into Howard University on a marketing degree, and so I was like, all right, I think I'm gonna go and focus my initiatives into business, but I still want to go and play in the marching band too because I want to be Nick Cannon somewhere. So like, that's my opportunity to go up north and like do my thing. And so went to Howard, played in the band for like a semester. Then I dropped out and was like, man, let me go and focus on business because like that's a bit more interesting to me and making money and whatnot. And so started focusing in on just business in general. I started throwing parties because I knew a lot of people and whatnot, and brought a lot of people to my events around DC. And from there, a group on campus asked me to help them market them and essentially manage them. They went by a group called GWN, Group Without a Name. So they were my first band that I worked with. And because I threw events, I was like, well, let me put an event on that included you guys. So I started an open mic called Unleashed. It was in partnership with Monster Energy Drink at that time because Howard University was a Pepsi sponsored campus. So Red Bull was on that campus and they were trying to figure out how to penetrate the students. And I was like, well, let me use this Howard band. And I found the venue right across the street from campus. And I was like, you sponsor this event, I'm gonna bring the students to you guys. So they helped us fund that event. And we started a bi-weekly open mic, which started getting popular around DC. And then one day, a little girl named Courtney Salter stumbles across the open mic and performs there and just wows everybody away. That young girl just so happens to be today Ari Lennox, and that's how I discovered Ari, from that open mic.
What year? Give us some context. What year is that?
So this year, I started high school. I graduated high school in 2008. Then I went to college. This was in 2010. So I was a sophomore at Howard University when I was putting on this event. And after I found Ari, I helped her work on her first EP, and that was called Ariography. It took a little minute to get it done or whatnot, but we eventually put that EP out in 2012 when I happened to be graduating, and we put the EP out, and I moved up to New York, and she moved up to New York, and we were just trying to do what we could to like make sure everybody knew who she was as an artist, and eventually someone from J. Cole's camp discovered her, and then that's how like the whole Dreamville connection happened. But I really got my start from being asked to be a manager, um, from throwing parties.
You know, I relate. I relate to the being asked to be a manager. Kind of like you just kind of fit into that role, right? You know, I guess I want to hear your story about like that moment where it became like a thing with Ari, from the sense of like, okay, you should be my manager, or is it something you were pursuing at that point, or were you just like, all right, I could make some moves for you? Like, how did that go down?
I was knee into it. I was like, yo, like I would love to be your manager. I think you're incredible. Like at that time, I was managing one of the hottest groups on Howard University, and we had this event that everybody was going to and raving about. And like I was essentially becoming a go-to guy for like uh entertainment related things on Howard University. And so, I was like, man, I think I could do something for this extremely talented woman. Plus everybody on campus was raving about her as well too. So off jump, I wanted to manage her. So the first thing I did was I asked her, was there a producer she loved working with? She can work with anybody. I'll talk to them and convince them to work with you without us having to pay any money. And then I had a relationship with this recording studio called Beyond Studios. Shout out to Udo Gray. He allowed me to, they have a program that they partnered with artists and allowed them to go and pretty much develop at that studio. They gave us free studio time. They recorded out they engineering costs, mixing, mastering, and we could distribute and do whatever we wanted with it. And so that's how we created her first project. And her producer, we just worked out some good business essentially.
Mhm. And talk to me about like the approach from you identifying artists that you want to work with, because managers, it's a lot of time being put in, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of time being put in. You don't know, when there's going to be a return in this investment of time, so you have to be very selective on the things that you spend time on. You know,
Right.
how do you, determine like what are the key things you look for when working with an artist, when you're like, look, I'm gonna be investing my time into this. Like, is this a worthwhile opportunity?
I think the first thing for me personally is a voice, right? Like one, we're in the business of everybody tries to replicate success and tries to knock off something that's already working. It's like any business in general. You're a small boutique business and you create something that people want. A bigger entity is going to come and try to knock it out before you get extremely successful. And so for me, I really try to focus in on like what can make you be hard to replicate and I start with the voice first. Like Ari had a very unique voice. All the artists that I'm working with right now have very unique voices that are very hard to replicate, and they have something that's very unique about them. And so I start there first, and then from there we kind of build records out based on like what their story is, and we go and find the right stories and the right records that match their voice.
Yeah, I mean, that's and things don't, when we start off as managers, there weren't things like TikTok out right now, and things, attention spans are a bit longer than it is now. What kind of changes over the years? How have you evolved as a manager? Are there things you do different now than you did, I'd say, the first half of your career?
The only thing I do different now is just again emphasize TikTok. I always explain to artists like this, like first and foremost, nothing has been moving the needle in music over the past really 4 years other than TikTok. So why not go and a lot of artists have that old excuse about oh it's corny or oh I don't want to do this or oh it's just a now thing. Why can't you take what's trending on TikTok right now and just insert your art into what's trending right now and get that visibility? Like for example, everybody doing these performances with the mic hanging down. That's what the consumers right now love. That's familiarity right now. So why not go and insert your fire song and do what everybody else is doing that's getting all these eyeballs? But you can probably cut through the noise if your art is better. You just don't even want to try.
Mm.
And so that's really big for me now, is like finding artists who are willing to try, things to get their art out there. Because at the end of the day, like, your art's not going to change. The approach to how you market the art is going to change based on the times we're in.
You bring up a good point, because there are those artists who I don't, TikTok ain't my thing. Like I don't really want to, it's just like, I don't want to post, even forget about TikTok. There are some artists who just don't feel comfortable or feel like the mystery route is the way to go. They don't want to post or promote their music on socials. From a manager's perspective, for managers who are listening in, it's not always smooth, behind the scenes, from the sense of like, using our experience and our expertise to guide an artist, right? How would you say to a manager who's listening, and a young manager, what is the best way to deal with an artist who maybe pushes back on the obvious, on things that for sure they should be doing? Are they deal breakers? Do you work around? Do you push back? What is the way to navigate that?
Well, it depends on how much patience the manager has, because at the end of the day, all the manager can do is give advice. If the artist doesn't take the advice and the artist is either making money, their money will potentially start slowing down. Or if they're not making money, that advice, if they don't take that advice, then they're just going to still not have money. And so at the end of the day, they're going to eventually change their perspective, because their career is going to drastically change, especially those who are neglecting TikTok. When I cannot emphasize that nothing has moved the needle in the past 4 years outside of TikTok, not one song. So I don't know why people just assume that they have the magic sauce, that they're going to just miraculously pop up with a song that doesn't move on TikTok and they're just going to break today. Like, that's not going to happen. It's not realistic.
Mm. No, it's true. I mean, but I've come across it before, and I think it's a matter of catching up. Perhaps if that strategy gets delayed until they realize they kind of have to do it, or sometimes
Right.
it happens on its own from like, a UGC standpoint, where fans are creating content around your music on TikTok, where that helps amplify things. One of the things
Right.
I want to talk to you about, from just the evolution of management, right? um, the standard of managers taking, whether it's 15-20% commission as as more of a business model, and artists now kind of fast forwarding to them becoming a bit smarter on deals, right? It's not like the days of being signed to a major doesn't really quite ring the same as it does now for most. For some it still does, but for now it's finding funding from different sources, doing licensing deals, being strategic in that way. Do you feel like managers, in terms of their business model, needs to be restructured in a way to affect that? Meaning, is it a 20% commission? Is it more of a 50-50 partnership with the artist in terms of helping build their business? Do you feel like it's headed to that way? Do you implement any of those business models, or are you more old school?
Yeah, I feel like it's all heading that way. I mean, there's going to be some people who are still just going to be a traditional 80-20, and I mean, that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think, as managers go through that journey and go through the times, and they look back and say, well, I wish I could do this differently. I think having some type of ownership in the business that you're building, makes a lot of sense. It's kind of, especially if it's a new artist who doesn't really have much going on right now. I like to go and explain to artists, this basic model, to see if you're manageable versus are you in development, right? You can only be manageable if you have a cash flow. And from a management standpoint, if I am getting 20% of your business and you want to have me manage you full time, or be able to have me you can afford me to give you that full time attention, thinking of it as a full time job, right? Essentially, you have to be making around $25,000 to pay me $5,000 a month, right? And that's
Mm.
before taxes. So that's essentially like a minimum wage job, right? To be a manager for you full time. And so if you're not even doing that bare minimum, then technically you're not a manageable artist. You're an artist in development right now that we now have to build from the ground up. And so, you know, I personally believe that that equity aspect should be implemented more, and I think it's heading towards that way, because it's only right. Like at the moment, your business is worth zero or whatever it's worth. If you're not doing that much, then you don't have a business right now. So we actually have to build what your business is.
So it depends on the stage. I guess the stage
Depends
of
on the stage, right, of where you're at. And I use that 25,000 as a threshold. If you're doing that every month, then cool, you become a manageable artist. But if you're not doing that, then you're not really a manageable artist, or at least you're not a manageable artist for an experienced manager.
Okay, that's a good point. So then artists who aren't hitting that, because even that 25, that's a decent number for a new artist. Like you got to be putting in, you got to be, whether it's brand deals, whether it's syncs or whatnot. Like it's a pretty sustainable business at that point. But the reality is a lot of artists aren't there yet, right? So artists who aren't there yet, what would you say to them in terms of how they should approach looking for a manager? Are they even ready for a manager? Like, at what point do you feel like, because at the end of the day, they all need development at that early stage, right? But they need development from someone who knows what they're doing. So it's kind of like a catch-22. So what do you say to the artist who needs that but can't necessarily afford to pay that artist of someone at your level?
It's getting tough right now. I wish I had a direct answer as to like what are the next steps here, because all the good managers are changing their business model to that, because it just doesn't make sense for us anymore with the time we have to put in and all the nuances that come with being a manager. And so that's why I say it depends on where the manager is from an experiential or from an experience standpoint. But if it's a young manager, like a percentage may make sense, because you're also learning the ropes too. It's trial and error. Granted, do I think maybe you should get a piece of the pie as well? Yes. But the experienced managers, we will find you. That's how I tell all the artists, like, you don't have to go and search for a manager. We will find you. I advise artists to focus on your business and focus on your fans now. You don't need a manager to get something to go on TikTok. You don't need a manager to make your content. You don't need a manager to get with a producer and to get in the studio. You need a manager to help you facilitate all the activity that you have going on and help you scale what you have going on. That's what you really need a manager for. And a lot of artists jump into the managerial stage too early. And it really it could potentially like affect the relationship. Like, for example, it may take you 2 years to get your business to a place where you are manageable, and you get a manager really early on, and y'all spend 2 years trying to build this up. And then, 2 more years you start making some money, but then y'all been together for 4 years, and like somehow the artist is like, man, I want to go and explore some new opportunities and some new individuals. And it's just like, we couldn't really do anything because we had to spend the first 2 years trying to even build you to make you a manageable artist. And of course, that's an ugly process because there's no money involved. There's a whole bunch of time, and there's a whole bunch of blood, sweat, and tears that artists just tend to forget about when they start getting active.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of risk associated with getting involved, on the earlier side, man. I totally agree with just being, I think even with, just so you know, like we've recognized that as well. And I think we can't ignore the fact that things are a bit more DIY at this level because there's a lot of tools, a lot of resources around for artists to use to get to a point where it makes sense to then spend the extra amount of time. I think just lowering the risk, even 5%, sometimes goes a long way.
Right.
And I think even here at the playground, like we do things like consultations where, like, look, we're not gonna invest all of this time for things to not pan out or for you to discover that this isn't for you or whatnot. It's just being flexible, giving the tools to then eventually say, okay, now I'm ready. Whether it's building, customizing your team, whether it's speaking to someone who can help put you in the right direction versus having to give up a percentage of nothing. 20% of zero is still zero at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, right. I will say this, like for me in our company, if we are getting equity in the artist's business, we're definitely putting our money where our mouth is. We're not just going to take equity for nothing. Like, we're going to also put up the money and make it make sense as well too. So like we don't give out equity deals and just say, oh, we're just going to, sit around and advise you guys like, hey, we're going to do an equity deal. Like, we know what it's going to take to turn nothing into something, and to do that is going to cost an investment.
Yeah, like any business, right? Like any business, any startup that you need capital in order for the business to grow, or sweat equity for a business to grow, you need to give up something. And
I always say this: if you want to make $1 million, you got to spend $1 million.
Yeah, it's a price. It's the cost of business, right? It's the cost of business. So totally, man. I think it's important for artists to hear this because it's the reality. I think everyone just it's cool to have a manager, to say that I have a manager, but managers are humans with lives and expenses too, and time is valuable. So we have to be strategic and smart with what we spend our time on, man. And just to kind of keep the conversation going, like, okay, so you found your artist that you're developing, because of the evolution of the business, right? Can you share some insight on like the kinds of deals that make sense for an artist? There's different kinds of deals, whether it's longer term licensing deals. Is there like a go-to deal that you think makes sense for an emerging artist, or are you kind of just like tailor it for each individual?
It's tailored for each individual. The one thing I will say for up and coming artists, I would highly suggest against a major label. I just don't think signing to a major label makes a lot of sense as a rising developing artist when you're competing with 50 million artists who are already established on the label, and they have to, there's only so many people that work at a label that can give you attention. And so, you want to go to a major label at the right time to get that right deal and be able to, use that major to be able to do major work. Like, you don't want to sign to a major to get indie services. Like, it's just not conducive for like your overall business. And that's what a lot of these deals are going to right now. Major labels are offering indie service deals, but they're taking major terms, and it's kind of wild right now. And so that's the one thing I would advise against until the right time is, and you'll be able to. I always tell artists this: you will feel the demand, you will feel it.
Yeah.
Um, and so at this particular moment, there are distro deals. There are a lot of independent deals, independent label deals that are out there as well too. And like the independent label route is a great way to go because you have tailored teams. They're smaller. There's way less of a roster, so they can like give you the attention that you need and whatnot. And so I would definitely focus in on distro deals and or you know independent label deals. I will say this as far as like terms and commitments: you get what you ask for. If you want a one-off deal, you're going to get somebody that's only going to focus on the quick return because they're like, well, why would I blow you up if you can just leave and go somewhere else the next term? If you want a committed partner, you got to give them committed terms.
Well, yeah, you gotta participate on the upside, right? I mean, I think that's business 101. No matter what industry you're in, if you're gonna commit to building something, I mean, you want to be part of the result of that longer term versus like, I built you up, now go ahead and capitalize on this without me. I think it's not just for that. It's for the sake of time. You're putting in a lot of time early on where it's not profitable, but you
Right.
want to be able to build something. The whole point of being a part of it is because you know what it takes to build something to become a profitable business. So you want to be a part of that, the success of building it up, so totally understand that part. And I think that's valuable information, man. I think artists need to know what they need for their business. And sometimes it's more than just money. All these labels have money. At the end of the day, it's not just about getting an advance that you have to pay back. It's about, well, what are the other resources that are going to help you grow your business without necessarily cutting corners? I think that's one of the things. It's like you still got to put in the work. I think once you sign a deal, that's the beginning. It's not like you've made it. You got still a long way to go, right?
Right.
Um, I know we only have a few minutes left, but talk. You know what, Leslie? I want you to tell us, like, what do you got going on right now? What are you excited about? Tell us about your business and what your your next few years looking like.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we actually have this artist right now that's on our label partnership side of the business named Nesta, and we put out his very first project in 2022 with the emphasis of building his foundation in London because he's a Caribbean artist. That's one we want to talk about as well too. Like, I have a basic concept with these new artists and how do we go and build their core fan base first. You only need, well, let me not say you only need because it's still a big number, but you need 10,000 fans or consumers to spend $100 on you over the course of the year to be $1 million a year business, right? And if you go and break down like your average university and your home state, the average university's student count is around 10,000 people. Start with your hometown and go and find 10,000 people that will like your music in your hometown. You don't have to worry about competition, especially if you live in a small hometown too. It's not going to be that much competition with all the other major artists that are out there right now. And go and build your foundation at home first, and go and spend all your money to target ads on there and make sure that like everybody in your city at least knows you exist. A lot of people skip that step, and like you could become a profitable artist business right there. That's what a lot of the New York artists do, and I'm surprised that most artists don't take that concept. Like I look at some of the data now, like most New York artists are going gold off of just New York and New York City alone. Granted, there's a lot of people there, but I mean, to go gold, that's a lot of streams. You know what I'm saying? So like, even if you're in a small town like Baton Rouge that houses a couple 100,000 people, I'm sure you can go and try to find 10,000 people that's going to appreciate your music if your music is really as good as you're saying it is.
Well, look, for all you artists out there that are looking to grow local and that strategy, looks like Justin might be your guy. So all the talent out there, reach out to my guy Justin to get some more insight, man. But listen, I appreciate the time, the gems you drop, super valuable, man. And if there's anything else you want to add before you take off, here's your chance. Tell us what's the name of the company?
Our company is called Black Wax.
Cool. And where can they follow you?
They could follow the company at blackwax.cc, and my Instagram is Justin LaMotte, JustinLamotte.
Amazing, bro. Listen, man, I appreciate you once again for taking the time out of your day to educate the community. We look forward to seeing you on the playground. And it's a wrap.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Take care.
Peace, bro.